The Galactic Council had watched Earth for nearly 50 years. They sent probes. They intercepted radio signals. They studied the small blue planet spinning quietly in the outer arm of the galaxy. And after all that watching, they came to a simple conclusion. Humans were not a threat. They were barely worth noticing. The Council was made up of 12 species, each one older than human civilization by thousands of years. They had built empires across the stars. They had weapons that could crack planets in half. They had ships that could cross the galaxy in weeks. And they looked at humanity the way a grown man looks at an ant crawling across his shoe when the Velthari Dominion asked permission to take Earth's resources. The Council did not object. The Velthari were a proud warrior species with gray skin and 4 arms. They had conquered dozens of worlds. They saw Earth as nothing more than a supply depot, a place to strip for metals and water and genetic material. The humans living there were an inconvenience, nothing more. Commander Zereth led the Velthari fleet. He was old for his kind, with scars across his face from battles fought before humans had learned to split the atom. He commanded 40 warships, each one larger than anything Earth had ever built. As his fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel and entered Earth's solar system, he felt nothing but boredom. This would not be a battle. It would be an extermination. The attack came on a Tuesday morning, Daniel. Carter was a Navy captain stationed at a base in Georgia. He was 34 years old, with short brown hair and tired eyes. His wife Laura had gone to Atlanta to visit her sister for the weekend. He was supposed to pick her up that evening. They were going to try that new Italian restaurant she had been talking about for weeks. At 9:15 in the morning, the sky turned dark. Daniel was in the command center when the first reports came in. Massive ships appearing over every major city. New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, London, Tokyo, Beijing, Mumbai. The ships hung in the air like mountains turned upside down, blocking out the sun. Then they started firing. The energy beams cut through buildings like they were made of paper. The entire city blocks vanished in seconds. The heat was so intense that people a mile away burst into flames. Car alarms screamed. Glass shattered. And beneath it all came a sound that Daniel would never forget. The sound of millions of people screaming at once. He tried to call Laura. The lines were jammed. He tried again and again, his fingers shaking as he punched the numbers. Nothing, just static and silence. General Marcus Cole took command of what remained of the American military. He was a big man with a voice like gravel and eyes that had seen too much. He ordered every available aircraft into the sky. Fighters launched from bases across the country, their pilots knowing they were flying to their deaths. Missiles roared up toward the alien ships. None of them made it. The Velthari point defense systems swatted them out of the sky like flies. Not a single human weapon touched an alien hull. Secretary of Defense Patricia Vance watched the destruction from a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. She was 52 years old, with gray streaking her dark hair. She had spent her career preparing for threats she hoped would never come. Now the worst threat imaginable was burning her world. She could do nothing but watch. The bombardment lasted 6 hours when it finally stopped. 47 million people were dead. New York was a crater. Half of London was gone. Tokyo burned for 3 days straight. The Velthari ships pulled back to the edge of the solar system, leaving behind a world covered in smoke and ash and grief. Commander Zereth sent a single message to the survivors. His translator turned his words into cold, flat English. Earth and its resources now belong to the Velthari Dominion. You may continue to exist as a labor force. Resistance will result in further punishment. This is your only warning. Then the transmission ended. Daniel Carter spent the next week searching for his wife. He drove through roads clogged with abandoned cars and walked through neighborhoods that had become graveyards. He checked every hospital, every refugee camp, every list of survivors that the overwhelmed emergency services managed to put together. He found her name on a list of the confirmed dead. She had been in a coffee shop 3 blocks from her sister's apartment when the beams came down. There was nothing left to bury. The funeral was held in a field outside the city because the cemeteries were full. Thousands of people stood in rows of folding chairs, each one mourning someone they had lost. Daniel stood in the front row, staring at an empty casket that held nothing but a photograph and a wedding ring they had found in the rubble. He did not cry. Something inside him had gone cold, like a fire that had burned down to ice. He looked up at the sky, at the clear blue that had hidden monsters just days ago, and he made a promise. Not out loud. Just in his heart, where the cold thing lived now, they would pay. All of them. The ones who had done this, and the ones who had let it happen. Across the world, humanity tried to pick up the pieces. Governments that had spent centuries fighting each other suddenly found themselves working together. There was no choice. The aliens could come back at any moment. They could finish what they started. The old arguments about borders and ideologies seemed childish now. Survival was the only thing that mattered. Patricia Vance became the first president of the United Earth Coalition. The old nations still existed, but they had agreed to put aside their differences until the threat was over. Some people said the threat would never be over. Patricia knew they were right. In her first address to the shattered world, she spoke simply. We have been shown our place in the universe. We are small. We are weak. We are alone. But we are not finished. We will rebuild. We will learn. And one day, we will make sure this never happens again. Not to us. Not to anyone. The Velthri did not bother to respond. They assumed the humans were making empty threats, the desperate words of a beaten species. Their observers watched Earth from a distance and sent back reports of reconstruction efforts. Humans were rebuilding their cities. They were launching small spacecraft to their moon and to Mars. Primitive efforts. Nothing to worry about. They stopped paying close attention after the third year. Earth was contained. Earth was harmless. Earth was forgotten. That was their first mistake. Deep beneath the surface of the planet, bunkers that had survived the bombardment, something else was being built. Laboratories where captured alien technology was being taken apart and studied. Factories where new weapons were being designed. Training facilities where the best and brightest of humanity were learning to fight a war that no one on the surface knew was coming. Daniel Carter was one of the first to volunteer. He left his old life behind and stepped into the darkness, into the secret war that was being prepared in silence. He trained until his body ached, and then trained some more. He learned to fly spacecraft that officially did not exist. He studied alien tactics until he could predict their movements in his sleep, and every night. Before he closed his eyes, he looked at a photograph of a woman with dark hair and a warm smile. He remembered her laugh. He remembered the way she said his name. He remembered everything. The galaxy thought humanity was broken. The galaxy was wrong. 10 years passed like a slow fire burning underground. On the surface, Earth looked like a world that was healing. Cities rose from the ashes. New buildings replaced the ones that had been destroyed. Children who had been born after the attack grew up hearing stories about the day the sky turned dark. Some of them had nightmares. All of them understood that the universe was not a safe place. The Velthri sent observer drones every few months to check on their conquered territory. They saw humans going about their lives. They saw small spacecraft traveling between Earth and Mars. They saw a species that had accepted its place at the bottom of the galactic food chain. They did not see what was happening. Beneath the surface, President Patricia Vance stood in a command center carved into the rock beneath the Andes Mountains. The room was the size of a football field. It's filled with screens and holographic displays and hundreds of people working in focused silence. This was the heart of Project Prometheus. The most secret operation in human history. Dr. Nathan Pierce walked beside her, his white coat stained with grease and his eyes bright with exhaustion. He was the lead scientist of the project, a man who had not seen sunlight in 3 years. He had given up everything for this work, and he would give up more if necessary. "Show her," Patricia said. Nathan led her to a viewing window that looked out onto an underground hangar. What Patricia saw there made her breath catch in her throat. Ships. Sleek black vessels with sharp angles and holes that seemed to drink in the light. They were lined up in perfect rows, each one a masterpiece of engineering and rage. 312 combat ready, Nathan said. Another 200 in final assembly? By next month, we will have 500. Patricia touched the glass. They look nothing like Velthari ships. They're not copies. We studied their technology, and then we improved it. Our drives are faster. Our weapons are stronger. Our shields are based on a completely different principle that their scanners cannot detect. Nathan allowed himself a small smile. We did not want to match them. We wanted to surpass them. In another part of the facility, General Marcus Cole reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The Velthari had grown comfortable in the decades since the attack. Their patrols followed predictable routes. Their military installations were lightly defended. They had forgotten what it felt like to be threatened. They think we are insects, Cole said to his aide, a young woman named Lieutenant Amy Chen. They think we are too small to matter. Amy had been 15 years old during the attack. She had watched her father die in the fires of San Francisco. She had spent the last 8 years training for this moment, pushing herself harder than anyone thought possible. Now she was one of the best pilots in the secret fleet. They are wrong, she said simply. On Mars, in a training facility disguised as a mining operation, Daniel Carter ran his squadron through combat simulations for the 1,000th time. His pilots were the elite of the elite, handpicked from millions of volunteers. They had trained until every maneuver was automatic, until they could fight in their sleep. Daniel was 44 years old now. His hair had gone gray at the temples. The coldness inside him had not thawed. It had only grown deeper, harder, more patient. He had waited 10 years for this chance. He could wait 10 more if necessary, but he would not have to. Captain Carter, came a voice over his communicator. You have a priority message from command. Daniel stepped away from the simulation controls and opened the secure channel. President Vance's face appeared on the screen. Older than when he had last seen her, but no less determined. Daniel, she said. It is time. The words hit him like a physical force. He had dreamed of this moment for so long that it almost did not feel real. When? 6 months. We launched the full fleet in 6 months. I wanted you to know first. Daniel nodded slowly. I will be ready. I know you will. Tricia paused, and something softer crossed her face. Laura would be proud of you. Screen went dark. Daniel stood alone in the corridor, his hands shaking slightly. 6 months. After 10 years of preparation, 10 years of hiding, 10 years of turning grief into purpose, they were finally going to strike back. He walked to the observation deck and looked out at the red surface of Mars. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, the creatures who had killed his wife were going about their lives without a second thought about the world they had shattered. They probably did not even remember the name of the planet they had attacked. They would remember it. Soon, in a secure laboratory on the far side of the moon, a team of scientists made the final adjustments to a device they called the Silence Engine. It was a sphere about the size of a basketball. It's covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift when you looked at them too long. Dr. Catherine Marsh was the project lead. She was a quiet woman with steady hands and a mind that worked in ways most people could not understand. She had spent 5 years developing this device, and she knew it would change everything. Explain it to me again, said the general who had come to inspect the project. What exactly does it do? Catherine pointed to a display showing the structure of faster-than-light communications. The Velthari and most other galactic species use something called quantum entanglement, relay systems to communicate instantly across vast distances. When one of their ships is in trouble, they can call for help and reinforcements will arrive within hours. She activated a simulation. The Silence Engine disrupts those relay systems. Any fleet within its range will be completely cut off from the rest of the galaxy. No outgoing messages. No incoming instructions. No calls for help. The general understood immediately. They will be alone. Just like we were. Exactly. Catherine's voice was flat. When we attack, no one will be able to warn them. No one will be able to save them. They will face us by themselves, with no idea what is coming. Across Earth and Mars and the hidden stations scattered through the solar system, the final preparations began. Weapons were loaded. Ships were fueled. Crews received their assignments and said goodbye to families who knew only that they were going on an important mission. Amy. Chen spent her last night on Earth visiting her father's grave. She had not been there in years. The cemetery was quiet, the grass green and carefully maintained. She knelt beside the simple stone marker and spoke quietly, telling him about the life she had built, the skills she had learned, the purpose she had found. "I do not know if I will come back," she said, "but I know I have to go. You would understand. You always told me that some things are worth fighting for, even if the fight is hard." She left a small flower beside the stone and walked away without looking back. In the command center beneath the Andes, President Vance reviewed the final battle plans with her senior staff. The holographic display showed the Velthari colony system of Kethvorin, their military headquarters in this sector of the galaxy. "This is our first target," she said. "We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we make sure the entire galaxy sees what we can do." General Cole nodded. "Our fleet will emerge from faster-than-light travel in a dispersed formation surrounding the system. The silence engines will activate immediately, cutting off all communications. Then we engage their military assets." "What about civilians?" asked one of the admirals. "We do not target civilians," Vance said firmly. "We are not them. We strike military installations, orbital defenses, and command structures. Population centers are off limits unless they fire at us first." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what was at stake. They were about to start a war with a galactic power, a war that many believed they could not win. But they had no choice. The alternative was to spend eternity as slaves, waiting for the next time someone decided to burn their cities and kill their families. Daniel. Carter looked at the holographic display and saw his future written in light. 10 years of pain and preparation had led to this moment. 10 years of carrying the cold fire inside him, never letting it die, never letting it warm. Soon he would let it burn. The countdown had begun. The Festival of Conquest was the most important celebration in Velthari culture. Every year, they gathered to remember their greatest victories. The worlds they had taken, the species they had crushed beneath their boots. It was a time of pride and boasting, of warriors sharing stories of battles fought and enemies defeated. Admiral Zyrith stood at the center of the celebration on the colony. He was even older now, his gray skin marked with the patterns of high rank, his forearms decorated with medals from a lifetime of conquest. He had been promoted after his successful attack on Earth, rewarded for eliminating a potential threat before it could become dangerous. The crowd around him cheered as he raised a glass of ceremonial wine. 10 years ago, he declared, "We struck down the humans before they could spread their disease across the stars. They thought they were special. They thought they mattered. Now they serve us, broken and obedient, as all inferior species should." The cheering grew louder. Zyrith smiled, basking in the adoration of his people. He had given them a great victory. He had secured resources that would fuel their expansion for centuries. He was a hero. He never saw the flash of light in the sky. It marked the beginning of the end. 300 human warships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They appeared simultaneously at every strategic point around the system, surrounding the planet and its orbital stations in a net of black holes and silent weapons. On the bridge of the flagship Defiance, Admiral Patricia Vance stood with her hands clasped behind her back. She had insisted on commanding this operation personally. She had promised the dead that she would be there when justice was delivered, and she intended to keep that promise. "Silence engines active," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Eric Santos. "All Velthari communications have been disrupted. They cannot send any signals outside this system." "Good," Patricia said. "They wanted us alone when they attacked Earth. Now they can feel what that is like." On the surface of Kethvorin, the celebration had stopped. People were staring at the sky, watching the strange black ships that had appeared from nowhere. Confusion turned to fear as the first explosions lit up the orbital stations. An aide rushed to Admiral Zyrith with a communication device. "Admiral, unknown vessels are attacking our military installations. We cannot reach the homeworld. We cannot reach anyone. Our signals are being blocked. Cyrith grabbed the device and tried to send a message himself. Nothing. The channels that had worked perfectly an hour ago were now dead, filled with static and silence. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he barely recognized: fear, high above the planet. Daniel Carter led his squadron into battle. His fighter was called the Hawk, a sleek and deadly machine that responded to his thoughts as much as his hands. He had trained for this moment for 10 years. He had dreamed about it. He had prayed for it in the dark hours of the night when grief threatened to swallow him whole. Now it was happening. "Ill wings, form up on my position," he commanded. "We punch through to their command station and take out their coordination. Without leadership, they will scatter." The Velthari defenders scrambled to respond. Their ships were larger than the human fighters, armed with weapons that had crushed 100 worlds. But they were slow. They were predictable. And they had never faced an enemy that had studied them so carefully. Amy Chen flew on Daniel's wing, her weapons targeting 3 Velthari fighters simultaneously. She pulled the trigger and watched them explode in bursts of fire and metal. She felt nothing but cold satisfaction. These were the people who had killed her father. These were the people who had burned her city. They deserved everything that was coming to them. The human plasma. Cannons cut through Velthari shields like they were made of paper. The technology that had protected the aliens for centuries was useless against weapons designed specifically to exploit their weaknesses. Ship after ship exploded. Station after station fell silent. On the bridge of a Velthari cruiser, Commander Thrall watched his tactical display with growing horror. The human ships were everywhere at once, moving in patterns that his computers could not predict, striking with weapons that his shields could not stop. Half his fleet was already gone. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They were primitives. They were nothing." The second officer had no answer. Neither did anyone else. The battle lasted for hours. When it was over, the Velthari military presence in the system had been completely eliminated. Every warship destroyed or disabled, every orbital station captured or reduced to debris, every weapons platform silenced forever. But the humans had not touched the civilian population. Not a single bomb had fallen on the cities below. Not a single beam had targeted the homes where families huddled in fear. Patricia. Vance watched the final reports come in and allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. "Casualties? 17 fighters lost," Eric reported. 42 crew members killed. The Velthari military losses are estimated at 94,000. 17 against 94,000. The numbers were almost impossible to believe, but they were real. The species that had been dismissed as primitive, insects, had just dismantled one of the galaxy's most feared military forces in a single afternoon. Daniel Carter landed his fighter on the deck of the Defiance and climbed out slowly. His hands were shaking, not from fear or excitement, but from the sheer weight of what he had done. 10 years of waiting, 10 years of pain, and now it was real. Amy met him on the deck, her flight suit still stained with sweat from hours of combat. "We did it," she said. "We actually did it." "What?" Daniel nodded. "This is just the beginning." Human forces moved to secure the system. Boarding parties captured the remaining Velthari vessels, taking crews prisoner with professional efficiency. There was no torture, no revenge killings, no cruelty. The humans treated their prisoners with cold respect, a sharp contrast to the casual brutality the Velthari had shown on Earth. Admiral Zyrith was captured in his command bunker, surrounded by guards who were quickly overwhelmed by human ground forces. He was brought before Daniel Carter in chains, his forearms bound and his medals stripped away. Daniel looked at the alien who had ordered the deaths of 47 million people, the alien who had killed his wife, the alien who had shattered his world and thought nothing of it. "You," Zyrith said, his translator rendering the word as a snarl. "You are one of them. One of the insects." "My name is Daniel Carter," Daniel replied quietly. "You killed my wife. You killed millions of innocent people. You thought we were too weak to matter? You were wrong." Zyrith tried to maintain his dignity, but fear was creeping into his voice. "The Galactic Council will destroy you for this. They will send fleets beyond your comprehension. You cannot defeat the entire galaxy." Daniel smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We are counting on them to try." Across the conquered system, human ships deployed broadcast stations. These were not weapons. They were speakers, designed to send messages across the galaxy at faster than light speeds. Within hours, every inhabited world would see what had happened here. They would see a species that had been dismissed as primitive, dismantling one of the Council's most celebrated military forces. They would see Velthari ships burning and Velthari soldiers surrendering. They would see Admiral Zyrith, hero of the conquest of Earth, standing in chains before the creatures he had tried to exterminate. The message was simple and clear. Earth remembered. Earth was no longer afraid, and Earth was coming for anyone who threatened its people. On the bridge of the Defiance, Patricia Vance recorded a message to be broadcast alongside the footage of the battle. "Members of the Galactic Council," she said, her voice steady and cold. 12 years ago, you watched as the Velthari slaughtered millions of our people. You did nothing. You said nothing. You treated us as if we did not exist. We have demonstrated today that we exist. We have demonstrated that we are not weak. We have demonstrated that attacking humanity has consequences. We do not seek the destruction of innocent beings. We did not target civilians. We are not the monsters you tried to make us. But we are no longer prey. We are no longer victims. And we will never again allow ourselves to be treated as lesser beings. The Council has a choice. Recognize humanity as equals. Deliver justice for the crimes committed against our world, or face the consequences of your inaction. You have 30 days to respond. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. The galaxy listened. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the great powers of the universe felt something they had almost forgotten. Uncertainty. The insects had teeth, and they were not afraid to use them. The great chamber of the Galactic Council had stood for 3,000 years. It was built on a space station larger than most moons, floating in neutral space where no single species could claim ownership. The walls were carved from stone, brought from a dozen different worlds. The ceiling was painted with images of the great treaties and alliances that shaped galactic civilization. Never in all those years had the chamber seen such chaos. 12 species sat in the circular hall, their representatives shouting over one another in a storm of languages and translator static. The holographic display at the center of the room showed the same images over and over. Human warships tearing through Velthari defenses. Admiral Zyrith, standing in chains. The emblem of Earth, a blue planet wrapped in a ring of thorns, hanging over a conquered world. High Arbiter Meltos struck his speaking staff against the floor. The sound cut through the noise like a blade. He was ancient, even by galactic standards, a member of the Silthian species who had helped found the Council long before most of the current members had achieved spaceflight. His voice carried the weight of centuries. "Enough," he said. "We accomplished nothing with panic." Ambassador Vrex of the Korathan hegemony rose to his full height. He was a reptilian creature with green scales and sharp teeth, a member of a species known for their aggression and their pride. "The humans have committed an act of war against a council member. We must respond with overwhelming force. We must teach them their place." "With what force?" asked Representative Yulani of the Thesan Collective. She was a tall, elegant being with silver skin and eyes that seemed to hold starlight. Her people were known for their wisdom and their careful approach to conflict. "The humans have demonstrated technology we do not fully understand. Their weapons bypassed Velthari shields as if they were not there. Their communication blocking devices isolated an entire star system. We do not know what else they are capable of." Vrex made a dismissive gesture with one clawed hand. "They were primitive 10 years ago. They could not have advanced so quickly. This must be a trick, an illusion." "The dead Velthari soldiers are not an illusion," Yulani replied coolly. 94,000 of them, destroyed in a single engagement. "Those are facts, Ambassador, not tricks." High Arbiter Meltos raised a hand for silence. "The question before us is not what should be true, but what is true. The humans have transformed themselves into a significant military power in a remarkably short time. The question is what we do about it. A delegate from the Marathi Syndicate spoke up. His species communicated through clicks and whistles that the translator struggled to render clearly. What do they want? Have they made demands? Meltos gestured, and a new hologram appeared at the center of the chamber. It showed a human woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes that seemed to look directly at each council member in turn. President Patricia Vance. Her recorded message played for the assembly. Members of the Galactic Council. 12 years ago, you watched as one of your member species slaughtered 47 million of our people without provocation. You offered no condemnation, no assistance, no acknowledgement that a crime had been committed. You treated us as beneath your notice. We're here to correct that view. Do not seek the destruction of the Velthri people. We do not desire conquest for its own sake, but we will no longer accept a galaxy where attacks on humanity go unanswered. We will no longer be treated as prey. We demand the following: full recognition of Earth and its territories as an equal power, reparations for the unprovoked attack on our homeworld, and the immediate end of any military force that views humanity as a target. If these terms are not met within 30 standard days, we will continue our campaign. Not against civilian populations, as was done to us, but against every military asset that threatens human security. The Council has a choice to make. We suggest you choose wisely. The hologram faded. The silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable. Rex broke it with a harsh laugh. They are bluffing. They cannot fight the entire Council. We have millions of war. Ships, they have a few hundred at most. Do we know that? Asked another delegate. Do we know how many ships they have built? We stopped watching them closely years ago. We assumed they were irrelevant. Mistake, Yulani said quietly. One that we all share. High Arbiter Meltos stood slowly, his ancient joints creaking. I have lived a long time. I have seen species rise and fall. I have watched empires that seemed eternal crumble to dust. And I have learned that the most dangerous enemy is not the one who is strong, but the one who has nothing left to lose. He looked around the chamber at his fellow council members. The humans were nearly destroyed. They watched their cities burn. They buried millions of their people. They spent a decade in silence, waiting and preparing. Does anyone here truly believe that such a species will back down because we threaten them with more war? No one answered. We attacked them first, Meltos continued. The Velthri struck without provocation, without warning, without mercy. We did nothing to stop it. We did nothing to condemn it. We treated the slaughter of millions as a minor administrative matter, not worthy of our attention. We let those words hang in the air. The humans have responded in kind, but with more restraint than we showed them. They targeted only military assets. They protected civilian populations. They gave us 30 days to negotiate, rather than simply continuing their attack. Rex slammed his fist on the table. You cannot be suggesting we give in to their demands. That would make us look weak. We are weak, Yulani said bluntly. Against an enemy we cannot predict, using technology we do not understand, we are weak. Pretending otherwise will not change that reality. The debate continued for hours, then days. Factions formed and dissolved. Threats were made and withdrawn. Some demanded immediate military action. Others counseled patience and negotiation. The Velthri survivors called for vengeance, their voices raw with grief and anger. Meanwhile, the human fleet remained in position around the conquered colony, a silent reminder that the clock was ticking. On the 23rd day, intelligence reports arrived that changed the tone of the discussions. Human scout vessels had been detected in other star systems, mapping patrol routes and defensive positions. New ships were arriving in Velthri space every few days, increasing the size of their fleet. And most troubling of all, the humans had made no attempt to hide these activities. They wanted the Council to know they were preparing for war. High Arbiter Meltos called an emergency session. The chamber was quieter now, the earlier chaos replaced by something closer to resignation. We have spent 3 weeks arguing, he said. In that time, The humans have grown stronger, while we have grown no closer to a decision. If we do not act soon, the choice will be made for us. Representative Yulani stood. I propose that we accept the human demands. Recognition costs us nothing. Reparations can be negotiated over time, and the Velthari did attack them first. There is no moral ground for us to stand on. Rex rose to object, but before he could speak, another voice cut through the chamber. The Korathan hegemony will not participate in a war against the humans. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. It was not Ambassador Vrex, but a younger member of his delegation. A military officer named Colonel Sethes. Vrex stared at him in shock. What are you saying? Sethes stood tall. I have reviewed the battle data from Kethforan. The humans did not just win that engagement. They dominated it completely. Their tactical coordination, their weapon systems, their ability to predict our movements. They have spent 10 years studying us. They know exactly how we fight. He looked around the chamber. If we go to war, we will lose. Perhaps not immediately. Perhaps not completely. But we will lose. I am a soldier. I have spent my life preparing for battle. And I am telling you that this is not a battle we can win. The chamber fell silent. Vrex looked like he wanted to speak, but no words came. High Arbiter Meltos nodded slowly. Thank you, Colonel, for your honesty. It seems the military perspective is clearer than the political one. He turned to address the full council. I call for a vote. All those in favor of accepting the human demands and beginning negotiations for peaceful coexistence? One by one, hands rose around the chamber. The Thesan Collective, the Marathi Syndicate, even the Korathan hegemony. After a long and painful pause from Ambassador Vrex, when the final count was made, the vote was unanimous. The Galactic Council had chosen peace. Not because they wanted to, not because they believed in justice, but because they had looked at the cold mathematics of war and seen their own destruction written in the numbers. Humanity had won, and they had not fired another shot. The diplomatic ship. Unity was small compared to the warships that had conquered Kethforan. It carried no weapons, only a crew of 30 and a delegation of humanity's leaders. As it approached the Galactic Council's space station, it was surrounded by hundreds of alien vessels. Warships and escorts and observation, craft all watching to see what would happen next. President Patricia Vance stood at the observation window, watching the massive station grow larger against the stars. She was 64 years old now, her hair almost entirely gray, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. She had spent 12 years preparing for this moment, 12 years of grief and anger and determination, all leading to this single point in history. Admiral Daniel Carter stood beside her, wearing the formal uniform of the Earth's Defense Fleet. He had not wanted to come. He was a soldier, not a diplomat. But Patricia had insisted. They need to see your face, she had told him during the journey. They need to understand what they made us become. The Unity docked without incident. The human delegation walked through corridors designed for beings much larger than themselves, past guards who watched them with a mixture of curiosity and fear. They had never seen humans in person before. Most of them had assumed they never would. The council chamber. It's even more impressive in person than it had appeared in the recordings. The high ceiling stretched upward into darkness. The 12 species sat on elevated platforms arranged in a circle. Looking down at the humans who stood at the center of the room, High Arbiter Meltos rose to speak. His voice was calm, measured, the voice of someone who had seen civilizations rise and fall. President Vance. Admiral Carter, Humanity. The Galactic Council has deliberated on your demands. We have considered your grievances. We have examined our own failures. He paused, letting the silence stretch. He acknowledged that the attack on Earth was unprovoked and unjustified. We acknowledge that our silence afterward was a failure of the principles this council was built to uphold. We acknowledge that humanity has every right to exist as a free and sovereign people. Patricia kept her expression neutral, but her heart was pounding. This was really happening. After everything they had suffered, after everything they had sacrificed. The galaxy was finally recognizing them as equals. Meltos continued. Therefore, the Council offers the following terms. Full recognition of Earth and all territories claimed by humanity. Reparations to be paid by the Velthari Dominion over a period of 50 standard years. Formal admission of humanity to the Galactic Council with all rights and responsibilities that entails. In a mutual non-aggression pact, binding on all member species. He looked directly at Patricia. In exchange, we ask only that you end your military occupation of Velthari space and release the prisoners you have taken, including Admiral Zereth. The chamber waited in tense silence. Patricia stepped forward. She was small compared to most of the beings in the room, but her presence filled the space in a way that had nothing to do with physical size. High Arbiter, Council members. 12 years ago, we were a people who had never seen war beyond our own world. We believed that any species capable of traveling between stars must have grown beyond violence. We believed that intelligence and advancement would naturally lead to peace. She let out a small, bitter laugh. We were naive. Attack on Earth did not just kill 47 million people. It destroyed our innocence. It taught us that the universe is not kind. It taught us that power respects only power. It taught us that those who cannot defend themselves will not be defended. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each species in turn. We built our fleet not because we wanted conquest. We built it because we never wanted to bury our children in mass graves again. We struck back not for revenge, but to make sure that no species would ever look at humanity and see acceptable losses. Patricia straightened her shoulders. We accept your terms. A murmur rippled through the chamber. But let me be clear about what this means. We will release your admiral. We will withdraw our forces. We will take our place on this council as partners, not conquerors. Her voice hardened. However, our fleet will not be dismantled. Our vigilance will not waver. We will contribute to the defense of council space against external threats. We will be the fiercest allies any of you have ever known. She paused. But if any species, council member or otherwise, ever attacks Earth or human territories again, there will be no negotiation. There will be no ultimatum. There will only be a response. We learned in Fire that mercy without strength is an invitation to destruction. We will not unlearn that lesson. High Arbiter, Meltos inclined his head. Then let it be recorded. On this day, humanity joins the Galactic Council. May this mark the beginning of a new era, built not on fear, but on respect. The formal ceremonies took hours. Treaties were signed. Hands were shaken. Photographs were taken that would be studied by historians for centuries. But beneath all the ceremony, everyone in the chamber understood what had really happened. Humanity had forced its way to the table. Not through diplomacy or persuasion, but through the simple, brutal language of military power. They had shown the galaxy that they could not be ignored, could not be dismissed, could not be destroyed. After the ceremonies, Representative Yulani of the Thesan Collective approached Daniel Carter. She moved with the fluid grace of her species, her silver skin reflecting the lights of the chamber. Admiral Carter, she said, her translator rendering her words in soft, thoughtful tones. I have studied your species in recent days. Your history is filled with violence, yes, but also with remarkable resilience. You have a saying? What does not kill us makes us stronger.
Oh.
Daniel nodded. Some of us say that. It seems to be true. The Velthari thought they were ending a threat. Instead, they created one far greater, one that may yet reshape this entire galaxy. Daniel looked out at the assembled council, at the species who had watched his world burn and done nothing. We did not want to reshape anything. We just wanted to be left alone, and now. Daniel thought of Laura, of the millions who had died without knowing that their deaths would be avenged, of the cold fire that still burned inside him, even after all these years. Now we want what everyone wants. Safety. Respect. A future for our children. He paused. But we are no longer willing to trust anyone else to provide those things. We will build them ourselves. Yulani nodded slowly. I believe you will, Admiral, and I suspect the galaxy will never be the same. The Unity departed the Council station later that day, carrying its passengers home to a world that had once been shattered and was now the center of an interstellar power. In the Council chamber, species that had once dismissed humanity began revising their assessments. In military academies across a dozen worlds, strategists studied the Battle of Kethvorin, trying to understand how a species that had barely reached its own moon had become a force that could challenge empires. On Earth, in a cemetery outside what had once been Atlanta, Daniel Carter stood before a simple grave marker. The grass was green. The sky was blue. The world that had burned was slowly healing. He placed a small flower beside the stone and spoke quietly, the way he always did when he visited. Did it, Laura. We made them pay. We made them see us. And we made sure they can never do this again. Not to us. Not to anyone. He stood in silence for a long moment, the wind rustling through the trees around him. I wish you could have seen it. I wish you could have been there. But I know you would be proud. You always believed in me, even when I did not believe in myself. He touched the stone gently, tracing the letters of her name. The galaxy knows we exist now. They know we are not prey. They know we will fight back. And I think somewhere out there, they are afraid of us. Afraid of what we became. Afraid of what we might do next. He smiled, and for the first time in 12 years, there was something like peace in his expression. Good. Let them be afraid. Let them remember. Let them think twice before they ever target another innocent world. Because we will be watching, and we will never forget. He walked away slowly, leaving the flowers beside the stone. Behind him, the sky stretched upward into space, into the vast darkness where humanity now claimed its place among the stars. The Galactic Council never did learn exactly how the humans had advanced so quickly. Some theories suggested they had found ancient technology hidden on their world. Others claimed they had made contact with unknown benefactors who had shared their secrets. The truth, the Council would eventually realize, was much simpler. Humanity had been underestimated. They had been written off as primitive, as irrelevant, as insects beneath notice. And in that dismissal, they had been given the one thing they needed most. Time. Time to grieve. Time to plan. Time to build. Time to transform themselves from victims into victors. The galaxy had created its own nightmare. A species forged in fire, hardened by loss, driven by a determination that bordered on obsession. A species that would never again trust in the goodness of strangers. A species that had learned the hard way that survival was something you earned, not something you were given. The Council, for the first time in its long history, had nothing to say. Some silences spoke, louder than words, and this silence would echo through the galaxy for generations to come.